Okay, anyways. All right, this is the DP podcast, and this is the Dark podcast, which is what the DP is. And when you gaze into the abyss gazes back into you. And when the abyss gazes back into you, you gaze back into the abyss. Within the darkness, the light shines. All right, so, oh yeah, mortals, immortals, gods, demigods, demi-goddesses, goddesses, titans, primordials, apparitions, phenomenons. This is the episodes or the series of episodes that basically are going to illuminate that, which is to shine light. Okay, I'll shine on it. Okay, all right. So, oh yeah, so this is why Bruce Lee as a emulator or like a mirror of true martial artists, the true martial artist that created the martial arts that he was imitating or emulating or whatever, performing, practicing, etc., 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 whichever one is true, or whichever ones is true. This is why he was so well at it. You know what I'm saying? That's why he was so that's why he mastered it in the way he did, or kind of, how would you say, he was very sufficient. Yeah. He was just very sufficient and proficient, or in his ways of practicing those forms of martial arts. And martial arts is basically the spiritual practice, basically what mortals will refer to as a physical form of spiritual practice. So he was into his shit. He knew what the fuck he was doing, or at least he knew what he was trying to do, even if he wasn't actually doing it. And he knew what it really looked like to be a true martial artist, even if he wasn't what he viewed as a true martial artist, or what he knew was a true martial artist. Just as the goddess and goddesses, the gods and goddesses who created the martial arts that he was, practicing knew, the ones that he was sufficient in knew. So yeah, so the previous episode was veering towards how phenomenons and apparitions, and how he knew about those things, and he knew that those phenomenons and apparitions were body jumping and possessing and hijacking vessels in order to misguide and misinform others about the martial arts that he, not only martial arts that he was practicing, but how how who the original originators and creators and true divine beings are, like the essence of these things and the origin of it. Okay, the creators, the source gods. So these phenomenons and apparitions, you, for example, if you're witnessing the cinema known as Stranger Things, when you see those kinds of entities and kinds of like forces coming through different dimensions and portals and shit, what's happening is that they're condensing their immaterial form, like their particles of matter, and they're condensing it so that they can exist within what you believe to be called what mortals believe to be called the physical realm. Okay, and that's why mortals, when they're like somewhere like in the woods, or they go anywhere like in Louisiana, the Appalachian Mountains, they don't really go to Haiti, but if they were in Haiti, goodness forbid, they would see these things actually truly exist. Like, Stranger Things was not a show, it was a documentary about the Gateway program, about Stargate, which was also known as the Stargate program. It was a government program that was not only hunting down people who had psychic abilities, but people who could use their minds beyond the third, second, and first dimensions. It didn't even matter if you were in third dimensional mental in a third dimensional mental state. They were coming for you. And it has connections with the breeding program, and blood transfusion, and plasma donors and shit like that, and donations. That's what they use that blood for, because they're trying to study the genetics of those psychic mortals and immortals, which, I mean, not psychic immortals anymore. It's just the gods and the goddesses, immortals, because they're trying to figure out how to like be immortal physically so they don't have to die. Because if they die, then they're gonna have to get their ass whooped for doing all the shit they did while they were in a vessel. If they if they even were cloned or synthesized with a synthetic or cloned spirit within them, which is the whole point of that, as well as the phenomenons and apparitions that I'm referring to. Those are the things that are actually entering and hijacking them. That's what they look like on the other side. Like they look a whole lot more what mortals will call uglier in all actuality, like in the fourth dimension, which is where a lot of them like to roam in the third and the second and the first, but like in between dimensions and shit, because they're immaterial, meaning that they're in particles, the particles of matter that that they that they have are not as condensed. To mortals, they're not visible to the naked eye. They're not visible to the eyes of mortals. Not always. Not that it can't be. It's just that that mortals, because they don't believe that those apparitions and phenomenons exist, even if they can feel them or sense them, they don't even, this is why it's so easy for their minds to get hijacked and manipulated, because they're willfully ignorant. They're not just ignorant, they're willfully ignorant. And that's why the previous episode referenced Bruce Lee, because he wasn't ignorant. He wasn't ignorant. He wasn't willing to be. And even if he was, he didn't try to, or he didn't even realize he was. And even if he did fucking realize, the guy didn't even have a chance to fucking figure shit out for himself, or just make it there. If he was willing to go towards that force, he was willing. Even if he was willing to confront his ignorance, he got slumped out. So, but I don't know him face to face. Like, I never met him in person. This is a perspective of if his spirit was aware enough for him to protect himself, shield himself, guard himself. But that's the reason why he most likely got slumped out, because he didn't have a soul to protect him. He didn't have ancestors, because if you have a soul, your ancestors are protected, which means your spirit is protected. And if your spirit is protected, ain't nobody gonna come at you. Ain't nobody touching you, bro. Because Source God ain't gonna let that happen. I mean, Source ain't gonna let that happen, and your almighty gods ain't gonna let that shit slide. So, anyways, the phenomenons and apparitions that you see in Stranger Things, that's what they look like on the other side. And they usually body jump, because a lot of them don't have the essence. Okay, they don't have a strong enough essence or any essence to use to materialize, because you have to be able to manifest. So when something materializes, which is not truly called, the reason why the root word of materialize is mat, as in matter, is because the matter, when it's condensed, it's manifesting into something. So it's condensing, and then it becomes visible to the naked eyes of not only mortals but immortals and other etc entities, deities, gods, primordials, titans, everyone, any other can see, visibly, detect it, sense it, feel it, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And it's not a joke. This is for real. Like, the things that you see in Stranger Things are the things that are body jumping and are actually talking through, or trying to talk to, and kind of like utilizing mortals to vindicate their false intentions, which are like just manipulative, destructive, sabotaging, reckless, harmful, and psychotic. That's what mortals refer to it as, psychotic, because they don't have a soul. So they act like they do. So someone that acts like they have a soul is psychotic. Okay? That's what these episodes are referring to. Like, it's just to break down what makes mortals so vulnerable in the shallower dimensions, which mortals refer to as the lower dimensions, than that of gods and goddesses, and the difference between having a soul and not ever incarnating with one, or having